Anyhow, I want to explain that harmonious social structure based on neo-confucianism. So based on the reason and rationality, there should be certain order. They really like that order, like a law and order, really. So they of course created a large legal document, like how to govern the nation, and then they also have some certain social order. So Yangban is the name of the class. I want you to remember the Yangban. So Yangban is the ones who became government officials. And in the beginning of Joseon Dynasty, any farmers or anybody who are not slaves, they can study for the government exam, and if they get elected or they pass the exam, that they can serve in the government as a government official. But it is a very difficult test. So you need about 15 years of rigorous study, especially studying Chinese Confucian classics. And then in the beginning, it's not hereditary, like a nobility or aristocracy that's based on the bloodline, right? Like you don't make extra effort to become aristocrat. It's automatically given. So in Joseon Dynasty, based on again the reason and the rationality, people who are working hard to earn this position of government official, and then they will become Yangban. Even though they retire from this position, they still remain as Yangban, right? It's reasonable. But later in Joseon Dynasty, people create the easy path for their descendants. So originally, the family of Yangban, who did not succeed to become a government official, like if they didn't pass it, for the third generation, they will lose the Yangban status and become commoners. And you can imagine how humiliating that is, right? So people didn't want to become commoners. They want to be special. So they will educate their children really, really hard to make sure that they pass the government official. And then even though the law didn't change, but they will create a lot of loopholes or systems so that the fortune or the wealth that they accumulated will be hereditary. So these are some of the images showing Yangban class. So what do? They read with the teachers. These are teachers. And then these are the Yangban. You can see from the dress, in a long, impressive, their hat called the cut. Spells like a cut. I got it like a cut. Anyhow, so they have that, impressive hats, and then they enjoy music, literature, and culture. So in a way, they are called the cultural elite. You will know this word, cultural elite. And then the next social class is Jungin. That really means middle class. So you have Yangban on the top. Of course, you have imperial family, the royal family. And then you have Yangban. And then you have Jungin. They are middle. And you have like a Sangmin. Do you see the Sangmin? Like they are really ordinary people, maybe 50% of the population, right? So Jungin is, I always tell my FYP students, and these are sort of you, like what kind of a professional you want to be. So they are the ones who are technocrats. They know their crafts. They know they are good at merchants, and they become artisans. So let's say if you graduate from FBM program at FBM, and you get a job at a financial company as like a merchandiser, you really become the Jungin class in Joseon Dynasty. So if you are a silk merchant in Joseon Dynasty, your class is Jungin. So what you can guess is they can accumulate wealth pretty quickly, right? That is actually true. So their gut is not as wide as a Yangban's gut. Like a Yangban will be a little bit larger like this, like twice. The brim should be wider. And they always, act like a little bit more what is it? A little subservient. What's the name of? A little, like a modestly than the young man class. But you can imagine they can be wealthier, and also the government, like translators. Somebody who speaks Chinese, Japanese. Translators are also the Jungin class, and also the painters. So if you are working for the Royal Academy of Painting, what's your class? You are Jungin. So let's read this. About 40 to 50% of the populations were slaves, or low bones called the Chanmin, or untouchable outcasts called the Baekjeong. Slavery was hereditary, as well as a form of legal punishment. There was a slave class with both government and privately owned slaves. Government occasionally gave slaves to citizens of higher rank. So you can eliminate your legal status as a slave and become a citizen called a 상민. In order to reinforce the class system of Yangban, Jungin, Sangmin, and then Nobi, sumptuary laws regulated the dress of different social groups, and laws restricting inheritance and property ownership by. So in early Joseon dynasty, women from the Yangban class, they can inherit almost the same amount of fortune from their parents if they are deceased. But if you go to the late Joseon dynasty, especially that Imjin War, and other invasions, people are to give more property ownership to their male heirs. I have a painting, but I have to explain this earlier structures first. So King Sejong, I really want you to remember his name, King Sejong. And then the Yangban, you must know what that means. I mean too. He was extremely smart person. I think he was one of the most brilliant historical figures in the world history. He was a linguist himself. He was also an inventor, a scientist himself. And he was working really hard. Like there is a historical record that officials are asking King Sejong that how many hours do you sleep? And then King Sejong said, people say he barely slept. So he had enormous intellectual curiosity, always inventing. So he came up with the vernacular Korean alphabet called Hangul. It's called Hangul, like the words of Korean. So these are the characters that he invented. So there are 14 of those consonant, right? Consonant. And then there are 12 vowels, and then you combine these where you create alphabet system. So I'm going to talk about Sejong a little bit later. So this is what I am lecturing today. So early Joseon dynasty, there was a sophisticated system of Royal Academy of painting. It's called 도화서. I mean, you don't really have to know. Royal Academy of painting. So there, kings educated young men, especially from the Jung class. They are the Jungin class. Children or artisans, and then it doesn't really have to. Your father doesn't necessarily have to be any class. Like if you are a child of a translator, but somehow you are very good at painting, you will be invited